RailFX Specialist podcast. We are super excited. We're actually having part two of our discussion with RailFX. And today we have John Moss, who has forgotten more about cable railing and how to create a quality railing product. He has forgotten more about these things than most of us will ever know. So I'm super excited to have him back on the show to talk a little bit more about the what sets RailFX products apart and a little bit more about the history of the company. So welcome, John. It's good seeing you.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And I think you may have embellished just a little bit there when you introduced me, but I'll take it.
Well, the proofs, the proofs in the performance, and the fact that you guys are constantly engineering and challenging yourselves to create yet a better product in this category, to me kind of speaks volumes about your vision and the credibility behind the company that was created here. So, before we dive in, I want to spend, a lot of today talking about the details of the products and a lot of the things that, in your view, builders and contractors should really pay attention to and what sets, things apart, because especially within the cable railing category, I think it's very, very hard for people to tell the difference, between the assortment of different products and companies and brands that are out there. So this is where I think your expertise will be extremely valuable to our audience. But before we get into that, I think the story about how RailFX started and came to present day is an interesting one. So, if we can, kind of take a step back in time to probably the days where both of us had a little bit more hair. Tell us about, the start of RailFX.
Yeah, so it is a unique story. I was a manufacturer's rep for many, many years and rep multiple different building materials and started repping, a cable line and I was having a tough time selling it because people wanted a complete system. They didn't want just a cable that they could go put into somebody else's aluminum or somebody else's wood post or composite post. They wanted a complete system that was basically engineered and that they could count on, that everything was designed to work together. And so I did some research, found some extrusions, and started RailFX as a complete company to provide a complete package. And we started the company, and probably less than 3 years after we started RailFX, actually, significantly less than 3 years, Nationwide Industries called us and said, "Hey, we'd like to buy your company. We want to get in the railing business. We'd like to, we would like to buy that business." And I was a little hesitant. Business was growing, things were good, but we got together, we talked, and it made a lot of sense. I was like, okay, this is going to help really grow this idea rapidly, by infusing more salespeople, more capital, things of that nature, all the things that it takes to grow a business. And I had ideas. I like product, I like designing product and coming up with the best ways to do things, but all that takes cash. And I was just a one-man show, with a couple family members helping me, and so it was, we were reaching our limits without making some significant changes. So fast forward, we sold the business to Nationwide Industries based out of Tampa, Florida, and they grew the business exponentially. And 2.5 years later, we were purchased by Prime Source Building Products, a $1 billion company, right? So, I mean, I couldn't have dreamt this up in color. I mean, there's no way that I would have put all this together and say, okay, 6 years later, I'd be part of a $1 billion company that is going to take this thing, to the masses, in large scale.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you gloss over that, like, I mean, almost like you're describing Sunday brunch, right? And I know better, I mean, we own our own business, and we haven't always. And that's a big scary leap, right? I mean, you're an independent rep. There's a demand from customers that you don't see in the marketplace and that you don't currently represent a line. And so you just jump into manufacturing.
Well, I guess in the backstory, my family's always been in manufacturing of building materials. They've more on the millwork side. So I had a heavy millwork background, manufacturing background as well. I'm the oldest of 7 children, and every one of us work in the millwork industry, right? So
Oh,
so
okay.
so it was a pretty easy. Yeah, when I say easy, that's a relative term, right? It's not easy to come up
Nothing's easy.
with all the components and how you package them and how make them all
Well,
work
and
together.
especially taking them to market.
Yeah. The advantage I had to get it to market and what put us into a national position, being a rep, an independent rep, there's independent reps all over the country. And we're all part of the same organizations. We rep some of the same lines, and they rep some of these same lines that we did, and they were having the same issue. So they called me and said, "Well, hey, would you do this for my territory?" And I'm thinking, well, if I'm doing it for mine, why wouldn't I? So
So you
literally,
instantly had a nationwide sales force just through these independent rep
exactly.
group relationships that you had already had.
Yeah, that's what really accelerated our program, right? Because of that relationship and knowing the sales side of it. My background's always been more in the sales side,
Yeah.
um, and
Now, how long ago was this that it started?
I started in probably, I would say, uh, mid 2015.
Yeah, so not that long ago. I
No,
mean, at that point, were there already cable railing products on the market?
but it was limited. I will tell you that it's probably tripled in size
Hmm.
of the people that have entered that market since we started. You just go online and you see, or
Oh,
go to the shows. There's a lot of people in the space. Um, and one thing that we'll talk about as we go along, a lot of people took an existing railing aluminum system that was designed to support aluminum balusters or glass or something,
right.
and they wanted to just
And
incorporate
it,
cable in there, and the system wasn't engineered for it. So you'll see posts that have a pretty significant bow and things like that. And so when it comes to cable rail, they're not all things aren't created equal.
mhm,
You really need to start with a system that's designed to support the tension of those cables. Those cables, each one of them, there's a minimum of probably 10 cables in a 36-inch rail height, right? And you take 10 of those cables, tension them to approximately 250 pounds tension.
right.
So that's a compounding effect. You have to have a pretty stout post to support that tension.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's actually a good segue. I mean, it's almost magical that I mean, you started this company and so quickly were acquired and then yet acquired again, and here you are, still working with the company, still involved in product development, just a far bigger team and checkbook behind you. So well done, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
um, and like you said, I'm sure you never could have imagined in a relatively short amount of time, right? I mean, we're talking about less than 10 years, um,
exactly.
that now you're part of a billion-dollar organization. So
Yeah.
so remarkable, and probably you know accidentally lucky, right? Even though, being acquired wasn't part of the game plan, when you see what the category looks like today, in spite of, producing an extremely thoughtful, smart, high quality product, everything else, there's several 800-pound gorillas playing in this category now.
Yeah, and it just so happens now we're one of them. So maybe we're not the 800, we're the 1,000-pound gorilla,
That's
or
exactly it.
1,500 pounds. So I would, yeah, no, it's I feel very blessed. Let's put it that way. It's put me in a position to really enjoy what I'm doing, not knowing not trying to figure out how I'm going to make payroll, all those things that small
Well,
business owners
and
do.
not like you said, I mean, it pays to be the biggest gorilla in the room, right?
It does. It does.
It,
And
it,
feels like you
it,
have a lot of people with, behind you, you got some depth on the
right,
bench.
right.
So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
So let's move into product because I'm not a contractor by trade, but I know just enough to be extremely dangerous in a whole lot of things in life,
Sure.
and I like to tinker, and I like to, a lot of friends, claim me to have a YouTube PhD. So I'm a big fan of, believing that, with a 5-minute video on YouTube, I can master most anything that a skilled tradesman with decades of experience would charge me thousands of dollars to do. I can conquer in a weekend. Um, and I have a special appreciation and fascination for science, and with railing, a lot of people, they view it as aesthetic. Some people who are intelligent view it as safety, which
Yeah.
they should. Um, Unfortunately, in most cases, I think most homeowners look at it more aesthetically than they do from a safety perspective. I've also
Yeah.
seen many contractors, especially when they're working with more traditional railing systems, um, they also appear to look at it more aesthetically than safety wise, because I've been on my fair share of decks where I go to casually lean against a railing with my cocktail in hand or something and very quickly jump back for fear of my own life. Um,
Yeah.
as well as tearing down, the railing of a friend's deck, and thinking, wow, that wasn't thoughtful. So, but all of that, in my mind, scientifically is magnified times, multiples, that I'm not going to exaggerate, but many multiples when you're talking about cable railing, right? It seems really simple, right? You grab some, steel braid cable, you throw a couple eye hooks into a wood beam, and you tighten it up until it looks straight, and hey, we're good to go, right? Um, that I think that's the general perception, um, until I have a 6-year-old boy, and I know the very first thing my 6-year-old boy does, when he sees any sort of railing, he climbs on it. And
Yeah.
especially with a cable rail, oh, I mean, that's just invitation extreme. So he's jumping on that.
Jumping
And
on it.
actually, literally, in some cases, jumping on that, right? So in the application that I just described, that cable railing would last a millisecond. It would be the first jump, and then that eye hook would get torn out of that crappy piece of wood that may or may not even be treated, um, and we'd be off to the races, right? So, and then moving up to more thoughtful applications, like you say, there's several companies out there that have just adapted their existing aluminum product, um, to be compatible with their cable rail system. So if you would, I mean, start as if we're idiots, which isn't, a huge leap for me. And, talk to us about cable railing. Let's start with cable railing 090, the pure
Yes.
basics.
Absolutely. So I tell people when we're talking about cable railing, it all starts with the post, right? That's your number one. I mean, I guess that's with any rail, right? You got to have your post anchored properly so you have the right lateral force to be that life safety. It's there more than just for looks. And and then when in particular when you're talking about cable railing, it's those end posts where your cable starts and where your cable stops. Those are very critical to the structure and keeping those cables tight and where your posts aren't going to bow. And that's whether it's wood or aluminum or anything. Those have to be, it has to be very robust to support that cable, in the tension and the multiplication of either 10 or 12 cables that you would have as that infill. So what we did is, what you want to avoid, and when we were figuring this out. What you want to avoid is you don't want to build a heavy duty post for every single spot, right? The intermediate posts don't have to be as robust as the end post, and the bigger the post, the more material, the more cost. So there's a balance between cost and function. So what we did is we used the exact same post for all of our end posts, intermediate posts, and it's an aluminum extrusion, pretty heavy duty extrusion. But what we've got here is we've got some inserts, some aluminum inserts that go into that post for your end posts, and those slide right into these slots. So you slide those in there, they go the full length of the post, and now your hardware is going to come through this direction here. So you basically created a truss, an I-beam type truss, and you've created stiffness in this post multiple times more than it would be without those. Without these, you put the same tension on, you're going to get a bowed post. And and that goes back to my point, people that try to adapt just a standard aluminum railing system without doing any modifications and just using their standard post, which works great if you're just supporting a vertical load. But when you're trying to support a vertical or horizontal load, that's a totally different thing.
Well, I think I mean, not every person, not every homeowner, not every contractor is a physicist, right? But the further you move up that pole, exerting 250 pounds of pressure, and then especially, let's say, a corner pole, where you've got cables coming off in two opposing, not directly opposing each other, but one moving north south, one moving east west. The load that upper cable is exerting on that post is significant.
Yeah, and believe it or not, it's that center cable that is taken and put in the set in the post, and then each one compounds, so you can see how it would have a compounding effect, and that's where when you're using a single corner post, so you've got your cables coming out either direction. Now you're pulling into a V to like an angle iron corner, so that keeps that post from bowing as well. When you're just pulling at it from the side, it has a tendency to want to bow more than going into the corner. And this is an example of what we've done. We put when we first started, there was little to no single corner post applications. Every time you got to a corner, you'd put another post, start a whole nother run of cables, and there's a couple things. It creates more bulk. With cable, what we found is less is more. The smaller the post, the fewer the posts, the fewer obstructions. That's your objective is to create a minimal amount of obstruction of your view. So we were able to come up with a way to where the cable doesn't bind in the corner. We can go through the corner post, and we just use a pipe in the center, so that cable just rolls over rather than binding on your holes on either side when you start pulling it through. So that enabled us to go longer with our runs and have single corner posts. That does a couple of things. It eliminates posts and obstruction, and it eliminates costs, because every time you stop and start with your hardware, every time you have hardware where you got to stop or start a cable, that's the cost. The cable itself is relatively inexpensive.
Yeah,
it's stainless steel hardware on either end that costs. So every time you stop,
it's a lot of things, right? I mean, it's cost, it's time, it's a potential mistake or failure point, and visually, isn't as clean looking as the solution that you just showed.
Correct. Yep. So
interesting.
That's so again, it starts out with the post, and then some of the other stuff, which is a little more decorative, is has more to do with the desired architectural look. What style top rail are you going to use? Are you going to run your top rail from post to post or over the top of the post? most people seem to like an over the post opportunity. It gives a long, continuous look.
Right.
One thing that RailFX does, we ship up to 20-foot top rails. So the ability for somebody to have long runs, for your average size deck, there's not too many decks out there that have a lot of runs longer than 20 foot without a break or a corner or some sort of a change.
Right.
So they're able to do, in many cases, no butt joints, just one continuous, and that creates a pretty strong rail system. You got a unibody construction now. You've taken one robust top rail going over the top of the post, tied all those posts together, and created a unibody construction. You're not depending on one post to support that load. You've got a series of posts that are supporting, that 300-pound guy that's leaning on it after he's had a few beers.
Yeah, right. That's amazing. What are some of the other details that sets RailFX apart from some of the other products that are out there? I mean, it definitely seems like you guys are extremely thoughtful about both sides, both the contractor install as well as the homeowner aesthetically, creating aesthetically pleasing products.
So, I'll use our most common top rail. This is what we call our RFX 200 top rail. You can set a drink on top of it. It's 3.5 inches wide. It goes over the top, saddles over the top of the post. So this is what I referred to. It comes 20-foot lengths, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you come to a corner or you're going to do a butt joint, you can see there's a groove there. We have a rail splice that slides into that groove. Then you can slide your other piece on, or if it's a 90-degree, we had these in the past, they were all welded. So you'd have a welded 90-degree splice or a 22.5-degree splice. Recently, we just came up with an adjustable splice.
Look at that.
So now it doesn't have to be welded. So in the past, if the contractor didn't know the exact angle, if it was a 45 or a 90-degree corner, that was pretty easy to calculate and they would know. But if it was an 18-degree or some off angle, a lot of times they'd have to go out and measure it, do all that, and get it back to us so we could actually custom weld a splice for that corner. Now we've got one that'll just accommodate anything from, a straight.
Well, that is so smart and so amazing. And as much as we like to say, the most common are 90 and 45. Like, you and I both know from being in the field, not every 90 is exactly 90.
It's not, and when you're trying to bring two rails together, I mean, you want it to be right.
Well, that's just it. And I've seen, we've probably both seen it 100 times where companies have engineered, a solution similar to yours, but it's locked at say 90. And let's say, the finished product when you're done building everything is 89.96. You're going to create some torque in those opposing rails, which is going to create a hair gap, right, in the sleeve where they're pressed together. And those are little details, but over time, that's also a water penetration point. It's unsightly. You're creating, load and torque on a product that wasn't meant to have lateral load on it. Whereas, your solution just, allows them to lay it in there based on how they built it.
Well, it makes it really easy for the installer, and ultimately it gives the homeowner or the end user, the person who gets to enjoy that deck for many years to come, a nice finished product. Like you said, there shouldn't be any gaps now. There shouldn't be any reason why they can't get a true tight corner and stuff like that. So those are another thing with our fascia brackets. Same idea. If we were going to do a double corner with a fascia bracket, we would weld it, right? We'd take two brackets, we'd weld it together. And so if somebody had a 28-degree corner, we would take two brackets and weld them together at 28 degrees. And we just got, this is a prototype I'm showing you here, but we've got one now that's hinged.
Look at that. That is beautiful.
Welded, now you can adjust to any angle that you need in the field and not have to go out there and make sure you got that angle absolutely perfect for us to weld up. So that goes along with the rail splice. Now you don't have to, you can
I love
one
it.
size
That's
fits all.
amazing, amazing. So thoughtful.
So,
So, but that said, while you're certainly known for cable rail, you get into other railing infill solutions. So you do glass panels, you do some aluminum balusters,
yeah,
you do
also.
right.
Yeah, that same framework. Basically, what you do is I've got a couple other samples with this piece here. Once it's installed, you have a flat filler if you're using cable, and that flat filler just snaps into the bottom to finish it out, right? So if I'm going to use glass or picket, I've got another filler that allows you to snap that in, right? Then you use a gasket that goes in here to install your glass or your pickets.
Beautiful.
You add a bottom rail. So it's a universal system, that you can be used for multiple infills. We focus because our the real rage right now is cable, right? So that's what we're really focused on. But there's people that they want cable in the front, and they got a neighbor on the side that's kind of more nosy, and he wants to put some obscure glass there, or they're getting a lot of wind from that direction, so they want a windbreak there, but they don't want to.
Right.
It used to be glass was the rail of choice if you had a view. And the idea was, okay, that's going to give you a better view. But believe it or not, it creates a lot of reflection. It's hard to keep clean. You can actually get
Right.
quite behind it with the sun shining through. It's like a magnifying glass.
Correct.
So cable is a much better solution.
Yeah.
If you're just trying to preserve a view.
Absolutely. Interesting. So what's new on the horizon? So what do you think is next? I mean, I love these bracket and mounting solutions. Obviously, very, very smart. Maintaining safety, but definitely increasing speed and efficiency for the builder contractor.
Yeah, I think one thing I would like to touch on, Patrick, before we move on to that is the last component, both from an installer's perspective, and it's the cable, right? So the cable can take as long to install the cable in some of these systems as it does to put the whole framework together.
Right.
So there's many places out there that sell you just bulk cable, and then you got to use these like bolt cutters to what we call swedging, crimp the fittings on the ends of their cable. So they have to manufacture all this stuff in the field. RailFX sends it out with one end that's a what we call a pole lock. It's like a Chinese finger lock or a PEX fitting. The cable goes in one way and you can't pull it out, right? And then on the other end, it's got something that's pre-swedged on, and it's just a threaded stud that's swedged onto the cable. And then this piece here is just a threaded barrel that threads onto this stud. So as you tighten that, it pulls the cable tight inside. So what the reason I'm bringing that up is because it's very significant. There's several people that use something a little different. I'm going to grab this here. They use like a threaded rod,
right,
with a nut on the end, right?
Right.
So what happens is these decks are built out of wood, all the structure, not the decking itself, but the actual framing members. In most cases, it's wood. Sometimes it's metal. But depending on when they're put together, they go up green, they dry out, things shrink, expand and contract a little bit. You can get a cable that may appear to be loose, or loosen. It's not because the cable's stretched. It's because the structure, and the longer the runs, the more apt that is to happen,
Right.
compound effect. And you get a cable that's not quite as tight. You would have to retighten that nut. And then, let's say you tighten this nut. And now the nut's all the way down like this. You got to cut the end of those threads off, right?
Right.
So a homeowner isn't going to go, most homeowners are not going to take and pull the decorative cap off the end, retighten that nut, take a Sawzall or a hacksaw, cut off the excess threads and put the cap back on. That's more than they're going to want to tackle.
Sure.
But the way RailFX has done this is we take that this fitting that you were talking about here is that threaded barrel that we talked about, right? This threaded barrel. And in the end of that threaded barrel, it's broached for a 3/16 inch Allen wrench. So all I do is I put that Allen wrench in here. So let's say your cable's loose. All I have to do now on my end as the homeowner, is the installer, he leaves him this Allen key, shows him how to do this. Let's say your cable's loose. All he has to do at this point is just give it a turn, and it's tight. So let's say you go out there, it's loose. They put the Allen key in, give it another turn, it's tight again. I mean, that's as tight as it needs to be with a quarter turn, all with this Allen key. You don't have to pull caps off. You don't have to recut the stud. And not only is it super simple for balancing the tension or retensioning if you have any issues, but it's super easy for the installer. The installer can put that in like that and be done and not have any issues. So
just, I mean, I'm just curious by nature, but and maybe it's obvious. So on one end, you've got that tightening structure. The other, you equated to like kind of a Chinese finger cuff. So
yep.
What the installer would do obviously is do his run, pull it on the Chinese finger cuff side
yep.
to get, basically
excess cable out. Yeah, he pulls out all the excess cable.
Cut the end of that cable.
Yep.
I'm sure there's some sort of decorative cap that then goes over that.
Yeah, it's a little low profile cap. It looks just like that there.
Perfect, beautiful. And then you fine tune the tension on the other end with the Allen key.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that is way faster and
it
way
is
more
faster.
efficient.
And a lot of the caps that go over the nuts, I mean, I've got one here. I'll show you just as a quick. So you can see, look at how high profile those nuts are, the caps are, right?
Yeah.
Those, the one that we were just looking at is really low profile, and it is a lot more aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, amazing. I absolutely love it.
And then if you put these cables in and you get one in the wrong spot, you're off one hole. We've got this little cable release key. So that just slides over the cable into that end fitting, and then you can pull that fitting off. So to actually put the fitting in, it's just as simple as sliding it on like that, pull out the excess cable, tighten the end, come back, cut it off, and pop the cap on.
Amazing. So wow, absolutely brilliant. I love it. All right, what else should we be talking about, John?
So as far as for this year coming up, we're looking at a couple of different infills. We're looking, we're hoping to add vertical cable. Some people, like that vertical look. So we're looking at adding that, some other infills, like some sort, like a mesh or something like that. I don't think it's going to be, not the same volume or demand that we'd have in cable, because anytime you use those other infills, you're doing a lot more obstruction of your view.
Right.
But there's still a demand from an architectural perspective. So we're looking at that, and we're in the process of developing something that would be less customizable. So with the RailFX system that I've been showing you, I mean, we can do a 48-inch rail height. We can do a 39-inch rail height. There's so much that we can do that's customizable, but we're looking at putting together a system that would be, less SKUs, almost retail type packaging, where they could go out, purchase something on the week, on a Friday, and install it on a Saturday using our cables.
Yeah, so, for kind of that big, I mean, I think, certainly within the Pages of Deck specialist, we even at times forget about that, because we're so focused on this amazing technology and these amazing craftsmen that build, $250,000, $300,000 dollar works of art.
Yeah.
But if you look at, home renovation decking, I mean, still the average deck is, like 10 by 15, 10 by 20, made of pressure treated wood off the back of a house, in a pretty basic configuration, and a good chunk of those are done by homeowners or friends or handymen,
Yep.
not, some of these artisans that fill our pages. So, I think, having a safe and, cosmetically pleasing solution targeted at that segment is a very smart business move, because there's still a lot of volume of decking that moves through that side.
The second or the third portion of development that we're ready to launch, and we'll be showing it at the IBS show this year, is we're looking at, there's a lot of decks out there that have basically a good wooden structure. The posts are in good shape. They can repaint them or whatever. They could take out their vertical balusters, take off the bottom rail, and just add cable in. And what we're trying to do is create something that is very do-it-yourself friendly. So no homeowner can go on the weekend, buy the cable and buy some of these fittings. And it's a face mounted fitting. So it screws right to the face of the post. You don't have to do any drilling through the post anymore.
Okay.
And I was a little skeptical. I got to be honest with you. When we first talked about it, I'm like, because we, as tradesmen, you can be a purist, right? No, the way you do it, you drill the holes, and it's spaced like this and it's done like that. And so I put one together for a video that we were shooting, and when it was all done and I got on the deck, I'm like, you know what? I'd actually use this on my house. It created the illusion from the inside that the cables were floating on the outside of your post, because they weren't going through the post. They were mounted to the face of the post. And it was really nice. I was very surprised. And it was a lesson to me to not prejudge something, until you used it and tried it and stuff like that. So we're really excited about that. We believe that this is going to take what is perceived as a fairly complicated install, from somebody that might not have the ability to drill 10 holes in every post, get them perfectly straight, because that's important. If you don't get the hole straight in the post, when it exits the other side, it exits out 1/8 of an inch off. Now you're going to see your cables do this. They're going to be all over the place, and your eye will pick up 1/8 of an inch difference, just that on a horizontal plane. So this gives them the ability. They're attached with structural screws right to the face of the post. We have a template that mounts to the post, and these little brackets go right on the post. Cuts the install time down by probably at least 40-50%, because you don't have to drill multiple holes. You just put them in with a basically what people would look at as a structural screw or a drywall screw, a stainless drywall screw, basically. We consider it. So that I'm super excited about, and I don't have a sample of that to show today.
But that'll be at IBS.
It will be at IBS, and I do have some pictures that I could probably email to you, and you might be able to attach it to this, just as a teaser, because I do think it's going to be
That sounds amazing. And is that something that that's going to be kind of a do-it-yourselfer, a do-it-yourselfer could approach this.
Exactly. Not limited to do it yourself. I think there'll be some professional guys that look at it and go, hey, I really like this, and give it, at least present it as an option.
Well, it's got to be much faster and much less expensive than the alternative.
When you cut the labor costs down, labor is I would say, right now the labor is pushing the equivalent of the material costs now in a lot of places. So if you can take that labor component and shave that down, that can be a significant savings.
Well, and not to mention, kind of like, what you say, what I love about your product specifically is I could envision, a deck getting an entire new facelift just by changing that infill solution, right? So, whether it's a homeowner, with an older pressure treated, deck with pressure treated balusters, a traditional deck, you strip that infill out and you go with this new cable solution that you're talking about, you've got a whole new modern deck. kind of in a weekend. Or even with your existing, system, because you're using that aluminum structure that's universal regardless of the infill, they can go from glass to cable to, even some of these new solutions like you're talking about, like wire mesh or whatever it happens to be, all within this, without having to scrap the entire railing system and starting over like you would with some brands.
And that's a little more intimidating. Now you're talking about remounting structural posts and all those things. So that's our goal, is to create something. That's how it started anyways, was to create something that was very non-intimidating and gave it the opportunity for more of the do-it-yourself. The guys that's pretty, decent handyman, but maybe still wouldn't want to tackle a cable project. They would see, go, okay, yeah, this is something I can do. And that's where I had that pegged, as that's the only place it's going to go, until I did a job on it with it. And then I was like, okay, no, I actually think that this could wind up being something that would be embraced at multiple levels.
That's amazing. So I love it. I mean, we're huge fans. We've worked with RailFX for quite a while. We're in kind of this blessed position that we only get to, we only work with people that we believe we can vouch for. And RailFX has always been one of those companies. I know you stand behind your product as well, from warranty solutions and whatnot, should anything ever go wrong. I also know, from a tech support for contractors and builders that are out in the field, if they have questions or they're running into little problems, I know you guys are always available to help them out.
Absolutely. Warranty is a huge issue. It should be a big consideration when people are making a decision. RailFX has a limited lifetime warranty, and it has a prorated installation labor replacement as well.
Which is huge.
Which is huge, because if I can honestly tell you that I can't even really think of any significant projects where we had to replace product or anything like that.
Right.
But just knowing that it's there, if something did happen, we're there. It's we're not going anywhere. We got a limited lifetime warranty,
right,
to the original owner, and if something were to happen, we still would cover the labor,
sure,
on a prorated basis.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, John, I can't thank you enough for sharing more time with us and helping our readers and audience understand that some of the subtle differences that really set RailFX apart from some of the other brands that are out there. I know people will be excited to learn more about this. I know they can do that on the website at railfx.net. But also, should anybody attend IBS here coming up, make sure that they swing by your booth and see it in person, because it's once you hold it, you can really feel the quality difference.
Absolutely, and it's pretty simple. If somebody wants to get a quote, they can go to our website, submit just pretty much a one-page document that just basically is a checklist, and give us a brief drawing. It doesn't have to be to scale of your deck. We'll turn that around in 24 to 48 hours to whichever dealer that they prefer to do business with, and get them a number. And then you're talking, in most cases, you'll see it land, within 2 to 3 weeks at the dealer.
Wow. Amazing.
So we're totally custom designed and engineered just for their deck.
That's great. All right. Well, listen, everybody, you certainly have our endorsement. Like I said, we're huge fans. We're super excited about some of the new stuff that you're coming out with as well. It's going to be a huge help, huge efficiency builder. Like you said, the labor cost has become so significant. Anything you can do to shave off time without shaving off safety and quality of the job, I know is a huge differentiator in the marketplace right now. So I think our audience is really going to find value in this. And get excited about being able to bring this to their homeowners and their next projects.
Right on.
All right. Thanks for the time, John. Really excited to see you. Thanks, buddy.